Today I'm going to be showing you how to do the long tail cast on. Casting on is simply how you get your first set of stitches on a needle so that you can knit and purl to make whatever it is that you want to make. My name is Amanda. I'm an average knitter and I like to talk about things that I've made, things that I want to make and that I'm working on, as well as sharing tips and tricks that have helped me along the way. If you're liking my content, please like and subscribe my channel and be looking out for my knitting foundation tutorials for more beginning things, or if you're coming back into knitting and you need a refresher. So on to the long tail cast on. So here we go with our long tail cast on. I want to start by saying it is my go-to cast on. It gives a nice neat edge. It is sturdy for when you begin knitting or purling your project. It's elastic enough for most projects, and it is actually, for me, the fastest cast on. So if I have 50 or say 100 stitches to cast on, it's going to let me cast those on very quickly. First, we need to start by learning how to do a slip knot. So for your slip knot, you're going to have about 3-ish inches between your fingers here with your yarn. You're simply going to cross those over to make a loop, and then you're going to make a loop come through your loop. You're going to snug it up, and there you have a slip knot. We call this a slip knot because if you pull the ends, knots slip off the yarn. Okay, I'm going to go through that again. So you're going to cross the yarn over, making a loop, and then you're going to pass the yarn through that loop, so taking another loop through that initial loop and pulling it snug. There's your slip knot. So long tail cast on, long tail is in its name, so you need a tail that is long enough to cast on enough stitches for your project. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to estimate that. So for now, I'm just going to come a little ways down so I can teach you the long tail cast on, so I have enough to cast on several stitches. I'm going to simply make my slip knot. Then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to put it through that slip knot, and I'm just going to pull the end until it's snug on my needle but not too tight. Okay, so I have a tail end here, so just like a dog or a cat, the tail attaches to like a body, which I'm going to think of that as the body, and then there's a free end. And then you have your end where your working yarn is, and that is attached to your skein of yarn. I like to leave the working end farthest away from me as I'm looking at the work, and my tail end closest to me, and I'll show you why in a little bit after we get some stitches cast on and we're ready to knit. There's a reason why I like to do this. All right, so here we go with the actual cast on. So I'm going to hold the needle in my right hand, and I'm going to take my index finger of my right hand and I'm going to just hold that stitch sturdy on my needle. Then I'm going to take my left hand, thumb and index finger together, and I'm going to insert them between my tail and my working yarn. So as I do that, I'm going to open up the rest of my fingers here, pinky, ring, and middle, and I'm going to take a hold of the working yarn and the tail end of the yarn. I'm going to turn my hand so you can see that. Taking a hold, just enough of a hold so I can't pull it out, but not a death grip with your fingers. So here you can see the configuration. Okay, I'm going to show you that again. This one takes a little bit of practice to learn. Thumb and index finger between the tail and the working yarn, and then I'm going to grasp with my other 3 fingers in the palm of my hand to hold those so they don't slip out. And then we're going to come to what people call the slingshot position. And that's where you take your needle and you bring it down between your thumb and your index finger, and it kind of looks like a slingshot if you've ever had a slingshot when you were a little kid. Okay? So show you that once again, slowly but smoothly. We're going to insert thumb and index finger, grasp the yarn, spread thumb and index finger, bring the yarn into slingshot position. Okay, so now here comes a little bit more of an intricate part. You have a loop around your thumb and a loop around your index finger. So we're going to take our needle tip and we're going to insert it on the leg of the loop around the thumb that's closest to you. We're going to go under and up. And then we're going to come over to the loop of yarn on your, I'm going to hold here with my index finger, around your left index finger, and you're going to come down and through. Then you're going to go through the loop that's along your thumb between those two legs. You can see we've got our second stitch forming, and I'm going to drop that loop off my thumb, and then I'm going to catch this yarn with my thumb and pull it snug. Okay, it's real slow. We're going to go through this a few more times, nice and slow. We're going to insert our fingers. I'm going to get my yarn all set again, slingshot position. Leg of the thumb closest to you, down and up. Leg closest to you on your index finger, down and through, and then between the two strands of yarn around your thumb, drop that off your thumb, pull it snug. Okay, do it again. Thumb around the index finger. I call this the window, through the window. Drop your thumb out, catch your yarn. So you can see I'm readjusting my yarn quite a bit. It's because I can't, this isn't the natural position as I'm filming when I'm doing my long tail cast on, so it's a little awkward for me. I'm gonna do a few stitches a little bit more quickly here so you can see how much more quickly I can cast these stitches on. So once I cast them on, this is where the tail closest to you comes in handy, is I'm going to need to turn my needle like so to begin knitting or purling. That leaves the working yarn closest to me. Because I have a lot of leftover long tail, you do not want to pick up your tail to knit. You will run out of yarn and then you'll have to start all over. So you want to make sure that you pick up your working yarn as you start knitting. Okay, so that is long tail cast on. So now I want to show you, how do you know how much? Sometimes you estimate too much and you have a long tail, and that can lead you to knit with the tail. You don't want to do that. But how much do you need so you don't get to, say, 45 stitches when you need 50 and you run out of tail to cast on? I'm going to show you that process, or the process that I use. If you've got another way that you estimate it, please go ahead and leave that in the comments. So what I do is I make a slip knot and I put it on my needle. I move that slip knot down to what I call the cap of the needle, and that would be the first stitch you're going to count. And then I take my tail and I loosely wrap about 9 or 10 stitches. So if I count this as 1, then I would wrap 9. We're just going to pretend that I have wrapped 9 loosely, and then I'm going to squish them all together, and I'm going to hold these two working and tail close. I'm going to slide it off my needle, and then I'm going to stretch this out. And then what I'm going to do is undo it, and I'm going to measure the length. I'm going to do this. I'm going to measure the length between my fingertips. So the example I'm going to use is if I needed 50 stitches. So if I did my wrap of 10 and I'm going to use an even number, and it measures 10 inches that I get after I've done my wrap, and I know that I need about 10 stitches. 10 stitches will fill that 10 inches. If I need 50 stitches, then I need 5 times this amount, which would give me, I need a length of about 50 inches to cast on 50 stitches. plus about 5 inches for a tail to weave in. So that's about how much you guesstimate that. So that is the long tail cast on. It is a little bit challenging to learn at first, I know, but with practice you can do it, and it is, in my opinion, the fastest cast on. Like and subscribe to my channel. Check out my playlist for my foundational tutorials, and I hope everybody's knitting is going great.